Ambassador Kale's hands shook as he reached for the emergency communicator. In all his 40 years of diplomatic service, he never thought he would see his beautiful blue world burning. The Zephyrians were a peaceful people. They grew crystals that sang in the wind. They built cities that floated among the clouds. They had never hurt anyone, but now everything was on fire. The Korthak had come 3 months ago. These giant bug-like creatures didn't just conquer worlds. They ate them. They turned entire planets into breeding grounds for more of their kind. Kale had watched through his office window as the first Korthak ships landed. The creatures were twice the size of any Zephyrian, with sharp claws and armor like black metal. They moved in perfect groups, like ants following orders from some invisible queen. Kale's people tried to fight. Their small defense ships fired energy beams that barely scratched the Korthak armor. Within days, 3 of their 5 worlds were gone. The survivors ran to ships and fled to the remaining planets. But Kale knew it was only a matter of time. That's when his intelligence officer brought him a strange report. Deep in the galactic data networks, there were whispers about a new species. They called themselves humans, and they came from a yellow star system that most civilizations ignored. The rumors said these humans were different. They fought wars unlike anyone else in the galaxy. Some aliens called them crazy. Others called them dangerous. Kale didn't care what they were. He just needed help. He activated the long-range transmitter and began broadcasting on every frequency he could reach. His voice cracked as he spoke into the device. This is the Zephyrian Coalition sending out an emergency call to anyone listening. Our worlds are burning. The Korthak Dominion is destroying everything. They've taken 3 of our 5 planets. We have maybe weeks before they finish us all. He paused, trying to control his voice. Behind him, he could hear the sounds of refugees packing what little they could carry. We have heard stories about humans from the Terra system. If any of you are listening, we will give you anything you want. Trading rights, territory, technology, everything we have. We just need someone to help us survive. The message went out into space, traveling faster than light toward distant stars. 3 solar systems away, Captain James Mitchell was drinking coffee on the bridge of the Terran cruiser Vigilant. It was supposed to be a quiet patrol mission along the outer rim. Then his communications officer looked up with wide eyes. "Captain, you need to hear this." The alien voice came to the speakers, speaking broken but understandable English. Mitchell had heard rumors about the Korthak from other species, bug-like creatures that moved in swarms and consumed entire worlds. Most alien governments just told their people to stay away from Korthak space and hope the monsters never came their direction. But this was different. These Zephyrians were actually asking for help. Mitchell recorded the message and sent it straight to Earth through the quantum communication network. Within hours, it was sitting on the desk of Admiral Robert Hayes at Terran Command. Hayes played the message 3 times in his private office. The desperation in the alien's voice was clear. He'd seen the classified reports about the Korthak. Intelligence suggested they were planning to expand beyond their current territory. If they finished with the Zephyrians, they might start looking at human colonies next. But there was another reason Hayes wanted to respond. Humanity was still new to the galactic community. Most alien species saw humans as violent primitives who had barely learned to travel between stars. They traded with humans because human technology was useful, but they didn't respect them. This could change everything. Hayes called an emergency meeting of the Terran High Command. Within 2 hours, the most powerful military leaders in human space were gathered in the secure conference room. "Ladies and gentlemen," Hayes began, playing the alien message for the group. "We have a situation." General Patricia Stone listened to the entire message without moving. When it finished, she looked around the table at the other commanders. "How many ships can we deploy?" she asked. Admiral Hayes pulled up the fleet positions on the main screen. 3rd Fleet is conducting training exercises near the outer rim. That's 37 ships, including 3 carriers. We also have a Marine Expeditionary Force ready for deployment. Stone nodded. The bugs think they can just eat whoever they want. Time to show them what happens when you mess with innocent people. The vote was unanimous. Within 6 hours, the largest human military force ever assembled outside of Earth's solar system was heading toward Zephyrian space at maximum speed. Colonel Blake Wilson stood at the observation deck of the carrier Defiance, watching hundreds of dropships stream out into space like angry hornets leaving their nest. Each ship carried 30 Marines, 12,000 of Earth's best soldiers heading toward a fight that could change everything. The 3rd Expeditionary Marine Force was humanity's pride. These weren't just regular soldiers. They were volunteers who had trained for years in zero-gravity combat, alien environment survival, and multi-species warfare tactics. Most of them had never seen real combat against aliens, but they were ready. Wilson had been fighting in space for 15 years. He'd seen pirates, smugglers, and the occasional territorial dispute between human colonies. But this was different. This was humanity's first real test on the galactic stage. Every other species would be watching to see what humans were really made of. Sir, Sergeant Kevin Thompson approached with his usual nervous energy. Thompson was young, maybe 25, with the kind of eager attitude that either got Marines killed or turned them into legends. The boys are asking questions about these Korthak creatures. What should I tell them? Wilson pulled up a holographic display showing what little intelligence they had. The images were grainy, taken from long-range sensors and survivor accounts. The Korthak looked like a nightmare combination of praying mantis and armored tank. They stood 8 feet tall, moved in perfect coordination, and had claws that could slice through most known metals. Tell them the truth, Wilson said. These bugs are bigger than us, stronger than us, and they've been fighting wars since before humans discovered fire. But they've never fought humans before. That's our advantage. Thompson looked at the images and swallowed hard. Yes, sir. Anything else? Yeah. Tell them to remember why we're here. These Zephyrian people never hurt anyone. They're artists and farmers and scientists. The bugs want to turn their worlds into breeding grounds. We're not going to let that happen. 3 star systems away, Ambassador Kale sat in his emergency command center deep underground. The once beautiful capital city above him was now a maze of defensive barriers and refugee camps. His people had never built military bunkers before the Korthak came. They'd never needed to. His communication officer, a young female named Vera, suddenly sat up straight at her console. Ambassador, we're getting massive hyperspace signatures. Something big is coming. Kale felt his stomach drop. The Korthak had found their homeworld. This was it. The end of his people. He watched the tactical display as 30 contacts appeared on the edge of the system. But something was wrong. These ships looked different. They were smaller than Korthak vessels, but they moved in formation like a school of fish. Sir, Vera's voice was shaking. They're broadcasting human identification codes. Kale stared at the screen. 30 warships. He'd heard that humans had maybe 100 ships in their entire fleet, scattered across dozens of systems. They'd sent nearly a third of their military to help people they'd never met. The main communication channel crackled to life. The voice was clear, speaking perfect Zephyrian with just a slight accent. Zephyrian Coalition, this is Captain Mitchell of the Terran Battle Group 7. We received your message. Where do you need us? Kale's hands trembled as he reached for the microphone. For 3 months, he'd watched his people die. He'd sent out that desperate message not really believing anyone would answer. The galaxy was a cold place where most species looked out only for themselves. But the humans had come. Captain Mitchell, Kale said, his voice breaking with emotion. Thank you. The Korthak have taken 3 of our worlds. Our intelligence says they're massing forces for a final attack on our last 2 planets. We have maybe 2 million civilians left, and our defense fleet is down to 6 ships. There was a pause on the channel. Then Mitchell's voice came back, and Kale could hear the determination in it. Copy that, Ambassador. We're uploading tactical data now. Our Marines are ready to deploy wherever you need them. And Ambassador, you're not alone anymore. In the depths of space, the human fleet spread out into attack formation. Each ship was loaded with weapons designed by a species that had spent most of its history finding new ways to fight wars. The Marines checked their equipment one final time, knowing they were about to face an enemy unlike anything in their training simulations. Colonel Wilson looked out at the alien stars and felt a familiar calm settle over him. This was what humans did best. When innocent people needed protection, when bullies needed stopping, when impossible odds needed facing, that's when humanity showed its true nature. The Korthak were about to learn what happened when you threaten people under human protection. Queen Commander Thrax stood on the bridge of her massive bioship, watching the approaching human vessels through compound eyes that had seen 1,000 worlds burn. The new ships were small and angular, nothing like the flowing organic designs the Korthak preferred. Through her connection to the hive mind, she could feel the thoughts of her warriors below on Zephyr 2's surface. The humans looked pathetic, short, weak creatures with soft pink skin and no natural armor. They moved in small groups instead of the efficient swarms that made the Korthak unstoppable. Thrax clicked her mandibles in what passed for Korthak laughter. These would be the easiest prey yet. Her confidence would last exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Major Tyler Brooks gripped the safety harness as his dropship screamed through Zephyr 2's atmosphere. Around him, 40 Marines checked their weapons and equipment with the calm efficiency that came from years of training. The ship's hull glowed red-hot from atmospheric entry, but the temperature inside remained cool thanks to human engineering. "All right, listen up." Brooks spoke into his helmet comm. "Intelligence says there are roughly 10,000 Korthak on the surface. They've been here for 6 weeks, turning this planet into a breeding ground. Our job is to stop them and rescue any Zephyrian survivors." Through the small viewport, Brooks could see the planet's surface rushing up to meet them. What had once been green forests and crystal cities was now a brown wasteland covered in strange geometric structures. The Korthak had been busy. "Sir," called out Corporal Jake Miller from across the transport, "what's our rules of engagement?" Brooks smiled grimly. "If it has more than 2 legs and tries to kill you, shoot it. If it has 2 legs and looks scared, protect it. Simple enough." The Marines chuckled, but Brooks could see the tension in their eyes. They'd all studied the intelligence reports. The Korthak were 8 feet tall with natural armor that could stop small arms fire. They had claws that could slice through steel and acid spit that could melt human skin. On paper, this should have been a massacre. But humans had never been good at following what was written on paper. The first dropship touched down in what used to be a Zephyrian city. The buildings were half dissolved, covered in a slimy substance that the Korthak used to transform conquered worlds. The air smelled like sulfur and decay. Sergeant Danny Walsh was the first Marine to step off the transport. He'd barely taken 3 steps when a Korthak warrior erupted from the ground in front of him. The creature was massive, 8 feet of black chitin and razor-sharp claws. It moved faster than anything that size should have been able to move. The Korthak raised its claws to strike, already tasting victory through its connection to the hive mind. In its experience, most species froze in terror when they saw a Korthak warrior up close. Walsh didn't freeze. He'd grown up hunting in the mountains of Colorado, where hesitation meant death. His rifle was already moving as the creature emerged. 3 rounds from his plasma rifle hit the Korthak's center mass before it could complete its swing. The creature's natural armor, which had stopped every Zephyrian weapon, cracked like an eggshell under the focused energy beams. The Korthak died without understanding what had killed it. The second warrior lasted long enough to let out a shriek of alarm before Corporal Lisa Chun put 2 rounds through its head from 50 meters away. Her squad moved forward in a coordinated advance that would have impressed any military academy instructor. They communicated through hand signals and short radio bursts, covering each other with practiced precision. The Korthak had never seen anything like it. In their experience, other species either fought in large, organized armies with clear command structures, or they fled in panic. These humans did neither. They moved in small groups that seemed to think independently, yet somehow worked together like parts of a larger machine. Within the first hour, Major Brooks realized they had a significant advantage. The Korthak hive mind made them predictable. When one warrior spotted an enemy, they all knew about it instantly, but that also meant they all reacted the same way. The Marines quickly learned to use this against them, setting traps and ambushes that the collective intelligence couldn't adapt to fast enough. Private Alex Turner found himself face-to-face with 3 Korthak warriors in the ruins of what looked like a Zephyrian school. The creatures had been using the building to store eggs. Hundreds of them lined the walls like oversized pearls. Turner knew he should call for backup, but there wasn't time. The eggs were already starting to crack. Instead of running, Turner did something the Korthak couldn't predict. He smiled. "Hey, ugly," he called out, pulling the pins from 2 grenades. "Catch." The explosions brought down half the building and cooked every egg in the chamber. Turner walked out of the rubble with a grin, reporting to his sergeant that the area was clear. Stories like this spread through both armies. The Marines talked about impossible shots and crazy tactics that somehow worked. The Korthak tried to process encounters with enemies that refused to follow any logical pattern of behavior. By the end of the first day, something unprecedented happened. For the first time in their species' history, the Korthak began to retreat from a battle they should have won easily. Queen Commander Thrax felt the confusion and fear rippling through the hive mind. Her warriors were reporting casualties at rates they'd never experienced. These humans fought like nothing the Korthak had ever encountered. Not like a hive mind with central planning, but not like individual animals either. They were something new, something dangerous. Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Hayes crouched behind the twisted remains of a Zephyrian transport vehicle, studying the tactical display on his wrist computer. 3 weeks of fighting had taught the Korthak that humans weren't the easy prey they'd expected. Now the bugs were getting creative, and that worried Hayes more than their raw strength ever had. The ground beneath his feet trembled as something massive moved through the underground tunnels. Intelligence reports said the Korthak had been busy during their occupation, turning the planet's natural cave systems into a network of breeding chambers. What was coming up from those depths made Hayes' stomach turn. "Contact, contact!" The radio crackled with Sergeant Tommy Rodriguez's voice. "We got something big emerging from the ground. Grid reference 77 Alpha." Hayes activated his helmet camera feed and immediately wished he hadn't. The creature pulling itself out of the earth looked like someone had crossed a rhinoceros with a praying mantis and then covered the whole thing in acid-dripping armor plates. It stood 12 feet tall and 20 feet long, with multiple heads that swiveled independently. Worst of all, it was spraying streams of green liquid that dissolved everything they touched. Bioweapon deployment confirmed. Hayes spoke into command frequency. "All units, we got acid spitters on the field." "Repeat, the bugs have brought out the big guns." Captain Michelle Torres was monitoring the situation from a forward command post when the first reports came in. She'd seen the intelligence briefs about Korthak bioweapons, but reading about them and watching them melt through Marines' armor were 2 very different things. "Sir," she called Hayes over the comm, "3rd Platoon is taking heavy casualties. These things are cutting through our standard gear like it's made of paper." Hayes was already pulling up tactical options on his display. This was what separated human military doctrine from every other species in the galaxy. When most armies encountered a new threat, they retreated, regrouped, and spent weeks developing new strategies. Humans adapted in real time. "All units, switch to ceramic core ammunition immediately." Hayes ordered, "I want every flame unit we have on the front lines. Engineering teams, start mixing foam barriers, anything to neutralize that acid." Within 15 minutes, the entire human strategy had changed. Marines who had been using standard plasma rounds switched to specialized ammunition designed to crack heavy armor. Flamethrower teams moved forward to create walls of fire that the acid creatures couldn't cross. Engineering units jury-rigged neutralizing foam dispensers from their construction equipment. Private Kelly Watson found herself face-to-face with one of the acid spitters when it broke through her squad's defensive line. The creature reared up on its hind legs, preparing to spray her with enough acid to dissolve a small building. Instead of running, Watson did something that would have seemed insane to any other species in the galaxy. She smiled and pulled out a kind of military-grade expanding foam. "Hey there, big guy," she said, diving to the side as the acid stream missed her by inches. "Try to spit with this in your mouth." The foam canister detonated inside the creature's primary head, expanding rapidly and hardening into an unbreakable seal. The bioweapon thrashed around for 30 seconds before collapsing, unable to breathe or coordinate its movements. The Zephyrian observers watching from their refugee camps couldn't believe what they were seeing. When the Korthak had adapted new tactics against their forces, it had taken weeks of careful planning to develop responses. The humans were changing their entire battle plan in minutes. Dr. Kale found himself standing next to a human field medic named Chris Palmer as they watched the battle unfold on a portable screen. Palmer was simultaneously treating wounded Marines and calling out tactical suggestions to the units in the field. "How do you do it?" Kale asked through his translator device. "Your people change strategies faster than we can even understand what's happening." Palmer looked up from bandaging a Marine's arm and grinned. "Doc, we've been fighting each other for thousands of years. Every war, every battle, every skirmish taught us something new. When you spend that much time figuring out how to kill each other, you get pretty good at adapting." The truth was more complex than Palmer's simple explanation, but he'd captured something important. Human military doctrine wasn't based on rigid hierarchies like the Korthak hive mind, or careful consensus building like most other species. It was based on controlled chaos, individual initiative guided by shared objectives. When the Korthak tried tunnel warfare, digging complex networks beneath human positions, the Marines didn't retreat and call for specialist equipment. Corporal Jake Morrison, a former coal miner from Kentucky, taught his squad how to use seismic charges to collapse entire tunnel systems. Within hours, human forces across the planet were using the same technique. When the bugs deployed pheromone weapons designed to cause panic and disorientation, the humans switched to sealed environmental suits and thermal imaging. Sergeant Rachel Kim figured out that the pheromones actually made it easier to track Korthak positions, since the chemicals showed up clearly on chemical sensors. But perhaps the most remarkable thing the Zephyrians witnessed was how quickly humans could switch between roles. Sargent and Cooper spent her morning calling in orbital bombardments that turned Korthak positions into glass craters. That same afternoon, she was found sitting in a refugee camp, sharing her rations with a group of young Zephyrian children and teaching them card games. "Don't worry, kids," she told them through the translation device, dealing another hand of go fish. "The bad bugs are going away. We promise." 20 minutes later, she was back on the radio, coordinating a precision strike that took out a Korthak command node without damaging the civilian shelter next to it. The Zephyrian children didn't understand the tactical complexity of what they were witnessing. They just knew that the scary humans with the big guns also shared their food and played games and promised to keep them safe. The Korthak Queen Commander was beginning to understand something that terrified her. These humans didn't just fight wars. They fought every type of war simultaneously. They could be ruthlessly efficient killers and gentle protectors in the same moment. They could adapt to any situation faster than the hive mind could process. For the first time in her species' history, Thrax began to consider the possibility of defeat. Queen Admiral Thrax gathered every ship in the Korthak Dominion for the final assault on Zephyr Prime. Her massive biofleet stretched across space like a living constellation, 300 vessels grown from the bones and chitin of conquered worlds. Each ship pulsed with organic life, their hull surfaces rippling with muscles and arteries that could repair battle damage in real time. This would end the human problem once and for all. The Thrax had underestimated these strange pink creatures at first, but no longer. The reports from the ground battles were disturbing. Humans fought in ways that violated every known principle of warfare. They had no hive mind to coordinate their actions, yet they moved together with impossible precision. They adapted to new threats faster than the collective intelligence could process. But space combat would be different. In the void between stars, numbers mattered more than tactics. The Queen Admiral had brought 10 ships for every human vessel. Simple mathematics would finish what superior biology had started. Admiral Robert Hayes stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the Korthak fleet emerge from hyperspace like a plague of locusts. His tactical display showed odds that would have made any sane commander retreat immediately. 300 enemy ships against 30 human vessels. Even the ship's AI was suggesting withdrawal to a safer position. Hayes ignored the computer's recommendations. He'd spent 40 years in the Terran Navy, fighting pirates and territorial disputes between human colonies. This was different. This wasn't about trade routes or mining rights. This was about whether bullies got to devour innocent people while the galaxy looked the other way. Captain Mitchell, Hayes spoke into his command frequency. Execute Pattern Delta. Time to show these bugs what human creativity looks like. The human fleet suddenly scattered in all directions, breaking every rule of space combat doctrine. Ships that should have stayed in tight defensive formations spread out across thousands of kilometers. To the Korthak observers, it looked like panic, prey animals fleeing in random directions. That impression lasted exactly 90 seconds. Commander Beth Rodriguez was piloting the destroyer Thunderbolt when the Pattern Delta command came through. She'd helped design this particular maneuver during war games back at Seoul, but they'd never tested it in real combat. The idea was simple in concept, but nearly impossible to execute. Turn the human fleet's apparent weakness into a strength. All hands, brace for rapid acceleration, Rodriguez announced to her crew. We're about to do something that's either brilliant or completely insane. The Thunderbolt's engines fired at maximum power, sending the ship careening toward what looked like empty space. Behind her, 29 other human vessels followed similar seemingly random trajectories. The Korthak fleet moved to intercept, their bio-ships undulating through space like giant sea creatures. Then the human ships began to communicate, not through radio transmissions that could be intercepted, but through a complex network of laser communications, quantum entanglement links, and coded thruster burns. Each vessel became a node in a distributed intelligence network that rivaled the Korthak hive mind in complexity, but exceeded it in adaptability. The scattered human fleet suddenly reformed into a three-dimensional formation that no Korthak tactical computer had ever seen. Ships moved in spirals within spirals, creating overlapping fields of fire while never presenting the same target profile twice. When Korthak bioships tried to track individual vessels, they found themselves caught in crossfires from directions their organic brains couldn't predict. Lieutenant Connor Walsh was manning the weapons station on the cruiser Vigilant when the real fighting began. The Korthak ships were impressive. Massive organic vessels that could regenerate damaged sections and adapt their weapon systems in real time. But they moved like living creatures, following biological impulses that human computers could analyze and predict. Target the nerve clusters, Walsh called out as a ship danced between streams of bioplasma. Right there where the hull color changes. That's their command center. The Vigilance particle beams carved through chitin and bone, severing the connections between the Korthak ship's brain and its weapons. The vessel continued to move, but its attacks became random and uncoordinated. Other human ships followed Walsh's example, turning their superior knowledge of anatomy into a tactical advantage. Queen Admiral Thrax felt the first stirrings of genuine fear as her fleet began to take serious casualties. The humans were fighting like nothing in her species' experience. They moved as individuals but thought as a collective. They adapted to her bio-ship's capabilities faster than the ships could evolve new defenses. Worst of all, they seemed to be enjoying themselves. Captain Danny Foster's voice came over the general communication channel as his ship, the Intrepid, crippled 2 Korthak vessels with a single torpedo spread. Anyone else notice these bug ships taste like chicken when they burn? The comment sparked a wave of laughter across the human fleet, even as they fought for their lives against overwhelming odds. The Korthak couldn't understand it. How could creatures facing extinction find humor in battle? They didn't understand that humans have been fighting impossible odds for their entire evolutionary history. Fear was just another tactical variable to be managed and overcome. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, 270 Korthak ships were burning hulks drifting through space. The remaining 30 vessels fled in panic, their collective intelligence finally accepting what their Queen Admiral died trying to understand. Humans didn't fight like any other species because they weren't like any other species. Colonel Tyler Wilson's boots hit the surface of Zephyr Prime as the last Korthak ship disappeared into hyperspace. The planet's capital city was in ruins, but his Marines were already setting up field hospitals and distribution centers for supplies. Sergeant Kevin Thompson was teaching a group of Zephyrian children how to play basketball using a makeshift hoop and a ball made from medical supplies. Ambassador Kale approached Wilson with tears streaming down his blue face. The diplomat had watched the entire space battle from his bunker, unable to believe that 30 human ships had defeated a fleet 10 times their size. Colonel Wilson, Kale said, his voice shaking with emotion, "You saved not just our people, but our entire civilization. How can we ever repay such a debt? Wilson looked around at his Marines. Some were treating wounded aliens with the same care they'd give to human casualties. Others were helping Zephyrian engineers restore power to damaged buildings. A few were sharing their rations with refugee families who hadn't eaten in days. Ambassador, Wilson said with a tired smile, you already have repaid us. You reminded us what we're fighting for. In the weeks that followed, word of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than hyperspace communications could carry it. Humanity had announced itself not as conquerors or empire builders, but as the species you call when bullies needed stopping and innocent people needed protecting. The age of human expansion had begun, but it wouldn't be built on conquest. It would be built on something far more powerful. The knowledge that when darkness fell and monsters came calling, there would always be humans willing to stand in the light and fight back. The Korthak Dominion never recovered from their defeat at Zephyr Prime. Within a year, 36 other species had requested human protection from various threats. The galaxy had found its guardians, and they came with plasma rifles and an attitude